All right. Hello, everyone. Very warm welcome to the May meet of the Women and Gender Book Club. It is sort of mind blowing to me that this has been almost a year of this book club. Last year, May is when a random tweet went viral, and I think there's been no looking back. It's just been crazy but amazing. And today we're discussing Manish Gaekwad's The Last Courtesan. Um, this is the first time we've picked up a memoir, and what a memoir it has been. It's very interesting in terms of how it's written. It's written about a woman, but by her son in first person, based off of recordings. Um, it's been a very interesting read to me, and like a lot of members of the book club already said, it's been flowing, literally. Reading the book has been a kind of seamless experience, at least in my understanding. It was a little bit like having a conversation, except I was just listening. So I very much enjoyed the book, but I would like to open this up a little bit to just get first thoughts on how the book made you feel. What were the sort of key things that jumped out to you in this while reading this book, and perhaps something that you would like to flag for the conversation? So, would anyone like to hop in? There are no formalities, please. I get awkward with a lot of these things, so just go ahead on your own. Okay, Pratichi, you're going to speak.
I
I'm
mean,
just looking.
Tanya, like just, I mean, just putting me on the
Now
spot.
this has devolved into full-on dictatorship. Clearly, people have known for a while. I'm not even asking. But yeah, I would
I
love
was
to
like,
hear. This is
I mean,
all
I was just
into
hoping.
camera,
I
by
was
the
like
way.
looking. I know, I was just looking at like anybody else. Oh,
Okay.
I mean, thanks to the group. Like this was something that I was hoping to read for a long time, and it's thanks to the group that you're forced to read it. Like finally, it is always like on to-do list, like the PDFs that are always open
Yeah.
on your tabs that you never get back. But this was lovely, actually. And obviously, like I think, I mean, I don't know if I had talked about this. Like I have worked, like I do work on courtesans, but in 19th century Western India. So this had been on my reading list that I should be, and I'm following Manish for a while, and I really like his way of writing. He's so witty, and that also like it starts with a very jarring. Like I was like,
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
don't
what is this
want to
happening?
ask him that once he joins in. If what is that? But it was a good hook, if that is what the purpose was. Like, I'm sort of killing my mother, but you're so
Yeah,
right. It was so witty and it was so light despite the heaviness of the subject that it was dealing with. I think that is a very commendable thing. We're talking about bomb blasts, and we're talking about people being strewn over, and we're talking about, rape, marital rape, and it's still very, on the face of it, very real, but still doesn't weigh you down. Like, it's not a book that tears you apart when you get up from it, which I thought was very interesting for the subject. Um,
yeah. I think couple of things stood out for me, like at abroad, and that's something like I would like to hear what everybody thought about it.
mhm.
Is one, I think again, as you mentioned, it's a memoir. So it has a certain quality of writing that like I have. I mean, obviously you read academic works because as a part of research, that's a different story. And this is something I think it kind of two things I found a little bit surprising, as if something that I didn't know about, is how like despite a lot of conversation on how the practice of the Tawais and the Devadasis kind of ends with the 1947, but it actually continued. And I know there are works on the bar dancing and several other stuff. Like this was like literally from the perspective of somebody who kind of continued. Like
Mhm.
it's kind of throwing light to these practices on a post-independence period, which
Yeah.
is not really talked about. I think that was something I was like that. I think this is actually a very good historical material. Because that's the general idea that everything stopped with the 1947 and like the anti-notch stuff. So this was actually helpful. And the other thing I felt was like the agency.
Mhm.
I really felt like the way, if you look into the films on courtesans, especially how the Bollywood kind of manufactured that wife or the courtesan is always pining for domesticity, for the
Mm-hmm.
respectability that they never got. Here, like, there are a couple of instances where author's mother is literally rejecting those
Yeah,
notions of domesticity, and she's
yeah,
choosing freedom.
yeah.
And that is something, yeah, I'm not very sure how many of you are aware of Nritya Pillai.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she is an anti-caste activist, and like she's from the family of hereditary practitioners, and I mean, she's very much in conversation. She continuously talks about the very problematic history of Bharatanatyam, and
Mm-hmm.
she would always say that this is where we need to talk about that. It's not only it's obviously there's a caste history for sure, but there's also like the anti-caste activists also did not do justice to these women, because there was a certain level of autonomy that were there for these women. But obviously, it's obviously within the structure of patriarchy, and we can debate and discuss more on that. But I
Yeah,
think these are the two things I really learned, and this was really insightful. And why
that's
we need
really
the memoirs.
fascinating. I mean, and I think it was actually, like you said, a very historically rooted work and still written in such an accessible first person way. Like there are things that you will remember about the history of, how courtesans worked and how it evolved, but you're not doing it in a sort of history book kind of way. So I think both your points about post-independence, evolution of courtesans, and the question of agency. I mean, I'm not going to go. There is a wealth of literature, obviously, on sex work versus prostitution and how feminists have tried to reclaim some of these ideas from, looking at women as disempowered subjects. But having said that, at least the protagonist in this particular novel book is very much making decisions throughout her life on her own terms. Some of it, obviously, I think would have to do with the very nature of a memoir. I think you cannot have a memoir without having agency, in that those decisions will always be yours because it is your story to tell. Um, to what extent they engage with how much, but I loved how it wasn't shown as forced coercion beyond a point, right? Like it was about someone taking charge of their lives. So I thought that was excellent. I did see Priyanka get like nodding very vigorously to some of Pratithi's comments. Would you like to come in and share your thoughts, Priyanka? Okay, great. But would anyone else like to just share first feelings or initial thoughts about the book?
Can I go ahead, Tanya?
Yeah,
Is it
please go ahead,
fine?
Vijay.
Thank you. Uh, so, uh, what I noticed, I mean, while reading that, I mean, as I moved ahead, what started really, intriguing me was like, what kind of men used to visit the wives in the courthouse? I mean, their story, I feel, remained untold.
Hmm.
I got really interested, and as you move ahead, definitely there is, I mean, a lot to appreciate about the book itself, but uh, there is a whole world to the men who came for different things. So if that can be explored, because it is like, so there was Shekhar, there was Lal Sahib,
Hmm.
there were generous men also,
Yeah,
who they were all along,
yeah,
and it really, I just got very interested in what kind of personal lives those men had, domestic lives, how they used to be at their homes. I mean, it's like
yeah.
I started kind of wandering into their, I mean, personal world, and I couldn't, I mean, get a sense of it, to be honest, if we can
Yeah,
ask the author this. And the second thing is, what was really striking, that which I'm little afraid of bringing it up with the Manish, that this I mean, the way Rekha, uh, I would say Rekha, I wouldn't say
yeah,
Manish.
that's okay.
The way Rekha says that how this idea of fertility, of a woman being fertile,
Hmm.
becomes the very reason to give birth to the child.
Yeah,
And until that, I mean, that thing struck her, she was not even thinking of getting married or having a child
yeah,
anyways, I mean, right?
yeah,
So I mean, how this the process of, I mean, the this fertility is itself institutionalized, and how to avoid the different kind of stigma which is there. A woman wants to be fertile, right? And they call it कि बांझ मैं बांझ नहीं रही अभी, इसके बाद मैं बांझ नहीं हूँ, तो I will have. So basically what I was thinking that, I mean, in the Kotha and in the surroundings, perhaps there was an element of giving birth to a child just to gain a social legitimacy, in itself. So and and the last point, sorry if I'm taking too much time, and the third thing, there are, I got this sense, maybe some of you must also have got this thing, that the way Rekha and perhaps Manish also chose to tell few things and chose not to tell other stories. It is always the discretion of the author, and but I'm just thinking aloud. I'm not clear what they not choose to tell us. But if that, can we bring it up with Manish? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adi. Those were such like nuanced comments. I really enjoyed that, and thank you for bringing the men into the picture as well. It's interesting to think about what kind of emotions those men who were either feeling lonely or were looking for love, especially those who didn't want anything in return, right? Because we're so used to seeing men through the frame of patriarchy as exploitative or abusive or needing something. That what were those men doing this for? And my sense, I think, is that it's also a function of time in which certain kinds of relationships are just par for the course. In that having a wife, but also having another place where some other kind of emotional or other fulfillment is, received. But thanks, that is definitely a really interesting point. And the fertility one as well made me think whether that is why Manish started out by saying that I don't really like my mother, because and to me also it struck so interestingly that it's it's in a kotha, right? In a place where general heteronormative couple marriages and those kinds of norms do not exist. But the fact that a woman is defined by her fertility still applies within that context, where she might not have the means to bring him up properly, or like might not, like she said, she doesn't even know what to do with a male child. I thought that was also interesting, that the gender roles were reversed in a place. There are very few places where you see something like that, but
and just one more thing, now that you have, you talked about it, I also wondered how the feeling of being a Hindu operated in a Muslim community, how she tried to make sense of things, how the names got changed to Rekha to Rihana and other. I mean, it is very interesting how I mean, the things got unfolded in itself. I mean, the way I remember one incident from the book, that when they went to see the flat that they are going to buy the property, and she was afraid that if she reveals that she is a Hindu, she might not get the property and the flat. So yeah, it was also kind of interesting for me, the occupation which is supposedly a Muslim domination. I don't know what to say, but when a Hindu goes into it, and how they find a way out.
That's actually it's a good observation. I mean, also I think, like you said, bringing up the politics of the book with Manish would be interesting, right? Because there is a way, I thought, in which the Hindu-Muslim relationship, or like the Hindu-ness or Muslimness of people, was taken for granted in the book. You didn't stand out. Nobody stood out just because they were Muslim or they were Hindu. Whether it was, the protagonist's patrons, or it was her customers, or people who did good or did bad to her, because it's also real life, right? Like it's not just a filmmaking device in which you will have like a villain who will always have religious connotations often. But it's interesting to me that you bring up this point about the need to change names in order to feel like you come from a certain kind of lineage, because a lot of courtesans who did ultimately become movie stars and people who got into Bollywood cinema, they actually reverted their names to Hindu sounding names like Meena Kumari, Madhubala. All of these were like Hindu names of Muslim women. So yeah, I think it's a lot about the economics of of naming in some ways, right? And what your name can or cannot get you. So, but thank you for raising that. Yeah, Pratichi has something to say, and Aarti as well. Yeah, please,
So
Pratichi.
I just to kind of continue with the conversation, because I think what Daljeet kind of talked about, I think one way of like why there is a preference for fertility and having a offspring, and obviously it would be a good idea to talk to Manish about it, but typically it's because it was a matrilineal, quasi-matrilineal kind of inheritance. So
Mhm.
women would prefer girl children just to kind of continue with the lineage, or
Yeah.
to just perform. That has been the case. And regarding religion and caste, and I think as a historian working on this, I think it's very difficult with the courtesan community to
Mhm.
determine the exact caste and community. And this is a problem that's coming from 19th century also, because the census records did mess up a lot of it, because I do have historical records from 19th century Maharashtra where I mean the like a equivalent of the Tawaf community called Naikins or Kalavantins, different from the Kalavans. They are signing their names, and you will see in a group there are supposedly Hindu names and supposedly Muslim names, but not very sure what is there, but something that they are continuously associating. It's a long, that as we call the Nisbat signatures, where there is a place marker, there is no caste marker, but there is a profession marker. So the groups were writing their names in terms of they are Ganarin, or like somebody who are singers, or like they're signing with their symbols of Ghungru, signifying they
Mhm.
are dancers.
Mhm.
So there are names, there are place markers, there are professions, but I'm not very sure like how well the religious marker can be a determining factor in ascertaining identity, because there's a lot that happened in the late 19th, early 20th century as to how these courtesans reinvented themselves in different ways according to the politics of the time. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, not necessarily the way we understand Hindu, Muslim, and religion in today's context. I'm not very sure it was always applied in the same way. But again, I think it's a good another question that can be of might be of interest to
Yeah.
ask Manish how he had navigated or seen how Rekha had navigated this kind of politics and so on. I think that's a great question to think about.
Thank you so much. Aarti, would you like to say something? You're muted right now.
No, no. In fact, Daljit and Pratichi covered what I wanted to share. The only thing was this book actually reminded me of this other book on these dancing girls of Bombay. I
Yeah.
forgot what that book was called. It was by Sonia somebody, but that was more of a journalist perspective of the girls who dance in bars. Whereas this is more from a child's perspective of a mom from the Kota and, again, their children and stuff.
Yeah. Ruth Benita's Dancing with the Nation. I think that's the one that you're referring to. Yeah, I'm sorry about the emails going out a little late today, but like I had mentioned it in that it is a lot of really interesting literature that intersects with um, a lot of professional trajectories also, like Pratishi was mentioning. I also didn't realize that we have an expert here. So in when Manish joins us, we will have a discussion for our conversation. Oh, thank you so much, though, Pratishi, for the historical referencing. Um, would anyone else like to jump in on any of
Hi.
the other?
So can I
Yeah,
say something?
go for it, Deeksha.
So another thing that I really liked about this book was the autonomy that Manish grants to his mother.
Mhm.
In writing his mother's memoir, he starts with the title that I am writing my mother's memoir, and it's not exactly her memoir. The title itself sort of makes that declaration that she's allowed to hide. And I guess we get this in the incident that happens at the very beginning when she makes up some story to hide the injury she has on her hand. And he's like, I understand what's happening, but I'll let it go. I guess that's the vibe we get throughout the book, and that's something I really like, that there is this autonomy that's granted to this woman, that here's your chance to tell your story the way you like it. I will
Yeah,
not be a man and interpret it and judge you. And throughout the story, he does not get preachy. He does
yeah,
not offer some sort of commentary. It's her story told in her language, and her language then further adds to the characterization of who she is. So that was one element, and I think that's one area we can ask Manish about. Like, what did he think about? Did he want to start his story judging his mother. To I don't really have a better word for it, because he did start by remarking that I want to kill my mother. So did he start with that intention? I want to really go to a conclusion as to what was this, or did he start just thinking, okay, I'll tell her because she's someone I love and I love her.
That's so interesting. I think we also have like intimate relationships are always so much more complex than just being able to sort of bracket. Um, but I think it's really nice, and I think Manish has just joined us. But so all the questions that we have, we can directly start uh, assaulting him. But wait, I should probably introduce him properly first. Hi, Manish. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for the wonderful book that you have written for all of us. We've been discussing all the different ways in which it has thrilled us, and there are a lot of questions for you already. So I think I would just begin by asking you to tell us a little bit about how you started thinking about this book and how it came to be. How difficult was it to write it, or how easy? So yeah, a little bit about that would be lovely. You are still muted.
Oh,
Yeah,
hello.
yeah.
Hi,
Hello. Yeah.
Tanya. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Oh, lovely. But I'm not able to see you.
That's because I pinned you, but I can remove the spotlight.
Oh,
Can you
lovely,
see me?
lovely. Yeah. Now,
Okay, hi.
thank you. No, that's okay. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much
Yes,
for joining us.
thank
We
you for inviting me. This was very special because this is probably the first book club that I'm
Oh, that's so
uh,
nice.
being invited to talk about the book. And so I thought, and like I said before, uh, because I couldn't go all the way there, at least the book has gone there. So
That's
thank
so
you so much.
sweet. Thank you so much. Thank you. But
Yes, so to answer your question, how did I start thinking about the book and writing it? Uh, it's it's a book that I've been wanting to write my whole life. Uh, Having grown up in a quota and having seen everything, observing everything from childhood, but I didn't have the skill set to write till I found my vocation as a writer, and that was in my 20s. But even then, I was not prepared. I was inexperienced. I hadn't seen the world. I had established myself as a writer. I mean, I worked as a journalist, but I always thought the day I have a book in hand with my name on it, then then I will probably be able to show it to my mother and say, okay, now I can tell your story, because she's been telling me her story in bits and parts for many years, and I've been collecting all those stories in my head. So it was only in 2018, after my first book was out, is when I wrote an essay about my mother, which went viral and which led to a book deal. And then I went back to her and I said, look, all these publishers are wanting to tell your story. Is it the right time to tell the story? And she agreed, and we sat down and recorded at length. And that's probably the first time I spent so much time with her, asking questions that I would otherwise never had the opportunity to ask. We don't ask our parents about their history, just assuming that they've always been good and perfect people all along. So it was time to sit down and humanize her, and
Mhm,
uh, and that helped me discover many things about how to write also.
mhm,
Because initially I started writing the book in third person,
mhm,
and when I read the first draft, I realized the story was not flowing, and that's when I went back to rewriting it in my mother's voice
mhm,
in first person. And that's when I realized that it was flowing much more freely and in her language, the way she speaks, that came out more uh, fluidly when I took her voice.
Thank you. That is so sweet of you. I mean, and I think the love that you have for your mother shows in the way that you have. We were just talking, Disha was just pointing out about how there is so much agency that you have given your mother in telling her story. Um, but like before I open the floor to
Tanya, just about agency, sorry.
yeah,
Uh, in fact, I think I didn't really have to construct it. I just heard all her recordings and I was just somebody who was typing everything that she was saying. So, and I didn't really have to, sort of, um, how as writers we tend to uh, develop um, framework to work within, and that, like, I didn't have to do that.
yeah, and I think that that's also beautiful in that there is agency in just letting her story be her words,
Yes,
and you are just a medium, right? In some ways.
absolutely, absolutely.
You're not, it doesn't seem like you're judging her or her choices or her decisions throughout the book. So I think that is wonderful. But before I open, I just have one question, and I think then there are lots of others who would be interested in knowing things from you directly. But can you tell us a little bit about the way you open the novel, open the book? As in, you start by talking about in this very dramatic hook of wanting to kill your mother. Was that a literary thing? Was it something about a complicated relationship? Did it change through the writing of this book, the way you saw your mother?
Uh, that's interesting you asked that because that line is because of the direct influence of Kamu's line, "Mother died today" in The Outsider, I think that's, or The Stranger. That's the name of the book. So that has always stayed with me, and that has always been about uh, you must kill your darlings to
Stephen King.
to to get the narrative to flow and to detach yourself. And I felt like if I allowed myself to emotionally detach from my subject, my mother was my subject in this case, then I would be able to freely bring her forth together. So, I mean, yes, I understand the first line is a little shocking, but it's also probably my style, the wry humor that I write with in my own, it's my own tone, and that sort of sets it apart when you start reading about her and you realize, okay, now we are following the mother in her own words. So it was important to give an introduction because otherwise, uh, I mean, not me, but the editor felt that we should have that introduction.
Thank you. No, that it really it was interesting. It was also interesting that you put that before, like, starting to speak in your mother's words. But I think it was it set the tone for a certain kind of book, and then you're pleasantly in some way surprised by how your wit and your humor also comes through in the writing, in that even while dealing with such a heavy subject, it never feels like the book or the story gets entirely bogged down by it. Precisely in
That
the
is
same way, I guess, your mother also was not, right? In the face of a lot of difficult challenges. So,
that
like,
is true, Tanya. Yes, she was somebody who was always telling me the story as if we were sitting in a roller coaster in an amusement park. Uh, so I guess that's the flow that comes through in her tone.
thank you. I'm going to now open this up so that others can jump in and I don't hog the space. Would anyone like to ask a quick question? And there is one, or you can type them out. There's one already in the chat box. Really love the references to the songs and ghazals. Felt like the narrative had a soundtrack while reading. Could you pick up? Could you pick your favorite, some favorite ghazals maybe? So that's I actually enjoyed that as well so much. I have never read a book, at least in recent memory, that picked on so many old Hindi favorite songs, and I mean, a lot of our readers also said that the book felt like it was flowing, right? And I think it was almost like humming a song, and in between you had these such beautiful snippets, your mom talking in songs. I mean, I think I personally am also like really addicted to old Hindi songs, so that was one of my favorite parts. But I asked our members also to share like some of their favorites. But this question is a good starting point. So which one is yours?
Tanya, I think, the ghazal that she mentioned, which was her signature closing song in her mehfils, was हमारी बात अंधेरा रहेगा महफिल में
Mhm.
बहुत चिराग जलाओगे रोशनी के लिए. That's because I haven't heard it with music. I don't know how it sounds. So in my head, I've started making a tune for it myself, thinking this is probably how it sounded. I really like the lines of that ghazal. Also, it uh, it it has a deeper meaning for a woman who was sold into that trade and found her voice in that song, which is written by somebody who remains anonymous, and sort of allows her invisibility uh, to disappear when she sings and performs it, and she made it her own. So I really like that song a lot.
Lovely. Thank you so
We
much.
don't have a we don't have a tune for it, but if you read the words, you can make up a tune in your head.
Absolutely, absolutely. Could hear that, I think,
Yeah.
through the words. I think Supriya has a question. Um, please go ahead.
Hi,
By the way,
Manish.
hi. Sorry, I'm just interrupting. There is a Last Courtesan playlist on Spotify. If you
Oh,
just
that's
look for it,
lovely. That is absolutely great. Thank you so
and
much
it's
for sharing that.
and it's got all the songs in sequence as you find them in the book.
That is
And
epic.
and I've been
Thank you
trying
for
to
that.
make my own. And I've been trying to make my own while reading the book. And
Oh, that's so
now I
nice.
Oh,
discovered.
Yeah, Supriya, please go ahead.
Sure. So, Manish, look at my love for Ma and you, that I joined
oh,
this call from the highway. I'm coming back from
thank
my
you,
Barry's
Supriya.
on classes. And I think this is more than to Manish. I want to talk about that. We usually say social media is like, um, it doesn't have much emotions. But I think the way I connected to Rekha, I think the way Manish used to write long threads, and the kind of a sensitivity with which he used to write at the same time, in a very matter of factly, I started following him because of those threads. And I remember the kind of a free-spirited incidences he talked about. And Manish, the incidences which has stayed in my mind and the way it has created some sort of a, because, that whole free-spirited, somewhere I relate. Uh, she was admitted in a hospital that I think, Manish, you don't mind, I'm talking about that incident, and because that's the way I feel that, the way we are all inhibited with our dressings and with our constantly shrinking. She was to get the discharge from the hospital, and
Yeah.
Manish said that, "Ma, ghar chalna hai, and kapde badal lo." So she said that, "हाँ हाँ badal hi lungi, nangi thodi na jaungi." And this whole, because that talks about the way she started accepting herself, the way she was very okay to talk about, because this whole body is so much, unnecessarily ingrained in our mind. And the way you talked about her was such a high point, and I will have this lifetime regret, Manish, that why I didn't finish my Yes Bank program on time and came to meet her, which was planned. I think this is a lifetime regret. But glad to see you and this book getting so much relevance, and we all relate to it.
Thank
So
you,
much love and
Supriya.
affection to you, Manish.
Thank you, Supriya. So nice to see you here. And I will talk to you in private later.
Sure.
Thank
Okay. Yeah. So, would Diljit or Pratichi want to like say your question directly to Manish? Go ahead. We were talking about things to talk about when he joins us, but now suddenly everyone's tongue-tied. But
Okay, how many people are in the club right now? Because I don't know how to
in
navigate
the
this.
club, I don't know, but I think we have between 32 to 35 odd
Oh,
people
lovely, lovely. And they've
right
been
now.
talking with you till I turned up, is it?
Yes, we have been
Oh my
talking for like the half an hour, and all the things
Should
that
I
they wanted
leave?
to do. No, no, absolutely not. Please go ahead. You guys, are you going to make the author leave? Because we're not like going to ask
No,
questions.
I think I'll go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, please let me know if I should ask all three questions. I
Just
mean,
ask
or
whatever you like.
okay,
We'll see how it totally
okay,
goes.
okay.
Yeah.
So, hi, Manish.
Hi,
Great to have you here. Yeah.
thank you.
So, I was just wondering, while moving through the book, as I started approaching the end of the book, this feeling was always there with me that all kind of men used to visit the wives in the kotha, and I was all. I mean, the your mother's story is very much interesting, but I also started interesting into those men's lives.
Mm,
I started thinking into their personal lives, how they used to be at their homes, what compelled them to come to the kothas for different purposes. I mean, you mentioned about Shekhar Lal Saab, their generosity, and it. So, I mean, what is your take on it? This is one question, and the second thing is that it is kind of very intimate. I and please pardon me if I'm not able to put it well. So you mentioned I mean that I would say your mother narrated it. Rekha says that
absolutely,
I think this is a better way to to go ahead.
absolutely.
He says that how the all kind of notions attached to of of a woman being fertile started
Mm,
bothering her. Okay, and before that she doesn't even think of getting married, having a child. But the when her people staying around her started saying कि तू तो बांझ है, so it
correct.
really started bothering her. And I
Mm,
was just earlier talking about that how this like marriage, fertility is also kind of institutionalized, ingrained,
mm,
and to have this social and cultural legitimacy. And one, I mean, there could be endless number of things which can make you feel in a certain way or take decisions in a way. And what is your take on it? And I mean, how you think of it?
Okay, so we'll go one by one because now I
Yeah.
forgot what the first question was. But you did mention about the patrons and about their lives. And what do I think about that? I think they came for entertainment because it was a form of entertainment at that time. Um, and I really don't think about their lives so much because they came as guests. They, were entertained and they left. So I didn't think or delve into their lives. Uh, and it's not something I also go into otherwise because in a similar manner, I would say my father was also a guest who came and who was entertained and he left. Uh, and I've not really bothered to think about his life because he he did have a wife and he did have his own family and children, and it never occurred to me to think about these men. So that's, I mean, moving on to the second question. I don't think they're so important. Uh,
That's a,
so
that's a, that's a good way of putting it. Like,
yeah,
okay.
you go to theater and you watch a film and you're entertained and that's it. I suppose you don't dwell about who came, saw what, and where they're going back and what their lives are. It's unimportant,
But
at least to me.
no, no. If I can, I mean, I can point it out.
Just
What I
yeah, okay. Go ahead, Ajit. Nothing. I just we had a couple of more questions, so if you could just
no,
do it really
yeah,
quickly.
we can just move it. Yeah. I'll just. What I
Okay.
was thinking that
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it was not just kind of entertainment that they came to seek for me, but the sense I got from the book. you know, the
Oh, okay.
uh,
Are you saying they came to seek something more than entertainment? I'm sure they did. I'm sure they wanted to be the wife's topmost patron, favorite patron, to be the wife's uh, I don't know, lover, paramour. Perhaps they had those intentions, but the wife here has the choice to choose who she wants from these many patrons. So perhaps only one of those many is important to her. And in that sense, for for a very long time, uh, mm, she had these patrons and who were nice to her. And not every patron is evil. Not every patron is coming there to uh, to use and abuse those girls. They are simply there for to be entertained. Lal Saab was simply there to be entertained. Shekhar, of course, he was fond of my mother and she also took a liking to him. But there is a, I think, duration and expiry date to all relationships, and with that, one ends and another begins. So that is what happened with patrons. We didn't really think about their lives beyond the quota. To answer your second question, which was about uh, what did my mother think about having a child? Is that the question?
Yeah, it was about the child being a compulsion in some ways to prove a femininity or like a womanhood, and
That is true. I
yeah.
mean, if you look at her own family, she had her own mother has 9 daughters to produce one son in the end, and she keeps going on and on and on till she has 10 children. So she also has to prove herself to her husband, to her family, that she's capable of producing a male child who will take their uh, uh, matlab, story legitimacy forward, like as a family. It's the women, the girls are probably not as important in in a in a in a regular household. Unlike, let's say, in a Tawai family, in a Tawai household, in a quota, a girl is actually more important than a boy because she will take the the profession forward. She will become a source of income. She will help the mother who becomes old then to survive in that environment. So, uh, yes, my mother didn't think about having a child until she was bothered by the comments and and where the wives were taunting her to prove her femininity. So it's a combination of what she grew up with and what she saw and was affected by. Uh, and she actually wanted to only prove that she was not barren. She didn't really want to prove that she should become a mother or she should start a family. That was never on her mind. Because there's a situation in the book where she says that she was at the railway station and my father came and he snatched me from her. And she said, fine, take him away. I don't care. I'll go to Bombay. I can have many more children if I want. So she was proving a point that it was not difficult for her to prove that she's capable of having a child. That's all.
Thank you.
thank you, Manish.
Thank you, Diljit. If you have more questions, you can just put them in the chat box. I'm going to go now to Sonia, who's been waiting for a while. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
Please go
Thank
ahead.
you. Manish, I really enjoyed reading your book and listening to your mum's voice. I just wanted to pick up on the references of like religious references, spiritual references, because it comes out in the book multiple times. Like your mum, she was sixth, I think, child, manifestation of Durga. So I was wondering, because she comes across as a very strong personality, was this her inner strength, or was this, I guess, within the societal norms?
I think she saw too much too soon, which I say is hardened her spine, but also softened her gaze about her life, and her instinct for survival was very strong because of the family that she was born in, where uh, they had to feed 9, 10 children, and very little resource for that. So I guess having seen that and having been removed from there without her conscience, without her knowledge, I suppose, when she was married off very early, taken away, need to work in somebody else's house, her in-laws' house, and so there was nobody to guide her or show her the way, and she developed this instinct to move from place to place, and on her own. I suppose it's inbuilt.
Yeah, because you could have 10 rekas and not every reka would end up like your mum. Some would crumble with that pressure. So it's amazing to see sad to see what she had to go through, but also amazing to see her resilience and her strength.
Yes, that is true. I think that is what it is.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to read out two of the questions that are in the chat box. One is from Priyanka, who says, Manish, how did you navigate language as a writer, as the one used for communication might have been different from the one that you ended up writing in the book? And the second question is from Varsha, who says, do you plan to write up about your own growing up years in a separate work?
Thank you for the first question. Language, when I tried in my own style, my own tone, it was difficult because it was affected. It was something I was trying to create, and it didn't work. But when I started writing it in her style, her tone, her language, her words, what happened is I realized that I was writing in a sort of vernacular English that I say, like a chutney English, which is um, there's a lot of dialects that she sort of peppers her conversation with. It's in Hindi, it's in Urdu. There's a little bit of maybe Khadi Boli. There's a little bit of some sort of a code language that the wives use with the ustads that they work with. So a lot of that made the writing, uh, in fact, easy for me because I didn't have to construct. I just had to sort of explain what she's saying.
Yes,
And I kept the language, in fact, very simple English, because uh, it had to reflect, her more than my education.
I have actually a follow-up question to that. I mean, I've also been thinking, thank you for that. From a strictly publishing sort of perspective, was it a difficulty or was it a consideration that, in some places you're using a mixture of so many languages peppered in throughout, or that, the English is not as, I don't know how to say it, but like the English is not flowing in a different sort of way. It's very eminently
Yes.
readable, but I mean, I just wanted to understand whether that was an issue.
Not at all. In fact, they understood that it didn't have to be highfalutin English. It had to tell a story in the simplest way possible, using maneuvering with the easiest way, easiest style that we could adapt to. And I think it came from just her.
It's actually so nice that you put it like that. I mean, throughout the responses, you've been mentioning about her being the center of everything, both the sort of telling her story, it being her story, it being her words, her language. I I also do want to understand though, because there is a certain positionality that you have as her son. Some of the sentiments that she might be expressing would be refracted through your own understanding of how much of this might have happened, how much of this you resonate with, how much of this you think is, exaggeration, or at some point where you thought as a writer something might not be suitable for being in the book, or something might be more suitable for being in the book. Because ultimately, I'm like, it's every story is a collection of incidents that you would have picked and chosen, like, and that would be you. So my question really is, how much of you is in the book, and how much do you think it affected the book because you wrote it, as opposed to her saying the story out to someone else?
Tanya, such me honestly, it has none of me in it. It's not my story. It's her story. She's told it. I'm just the stenographer. But yes, I feel like I used her language to string the prose like a melody. So when you read it, it flows like I hope so, at least. I hope it flows like a song, that it has a rhythm. Uh, and it doesn't jar at any point with my own personal interjection or sort of elaborating it unnecessarily. It's very to the point, and it's almost the story is, I mean, I think it's oral. When you're reading it, it's almost like you're sitting with her in a room where she's just talking to you.
Yeah, it
So
feels
there is
like that.
none of the craftiness of a writer that from where I come, which you see in the introduction. It's a
Yeah.
very different voice.
Absolutely.
So
Which is why I was
I,
wondering, were
yes,
you
so
able to actually disassociate yourself to that extent? If she had told this story to another person, do you think it would have come out similarly?
uh, I think so. Yes,
Wow,
very true. Yes.
that's
I
but
mean, they follow because it was a very long recording. I think I recorded her for about 6 months, and we did it almost every day for an hour or so. And then I went over it for another 6 months. There was actually a lot that I suppose I left out because there's so much to put in. And I wanted to keep it uh, also very uh, like a quick read because, today it's very difficult to pick up a book and read it in one sitting. We're so distracted by our phones that every one paragraph we finish, we look at our phone to say, "Arey bhai, is somebody take me, somebody take me away from this book." No, but I have found that a lot of readers have come back to me saying it was so easy that they sat down, they finished it, and that's exactly how I'd like to read a book. Pick it up, try and finish it in one reading, because once you keep it down, well, I don't know when you'll come back to it. And if the story is hopefully this compelling, then and it flows easily, where you don't have to refer to a dictionary you know or a reference to some other material, then it's just like a oral story that a woman is sitting and telling you.
and that's definitely there throughout. I think a lot of people told us, including Anuradha, who just messaged that after very long, she's finished a book in one sitting. So I think that is definitely a universal feeling. But I think Varsha's question now is even more significant, which is, do you plan to write about your story from your perspective or your growing up years as a sort of corollary to, in some ways, to how your
Yes,
mother.
Tanya, I'm actually writing the follow-up to this. It's about my own growing up years in the Kota. And usually one hears about what happens to the girl who grows up in the Kota, but never about what happens to the boy who grows up in the Kota. So, and I think I'm looking at the period till I'm about 16 or 17, because that's when the Kotas wrapped up in the 90s, in the late 90s. Yeah.
And when can we see this book in flesh and blood come alive?
Inshallah, hopefully next year.
Okay, that's lovely. We shall all very much look forward to that. Um, and I mean, I do obviously have a lot more, but would anyone else like to jump in with any initial questions?
I want to ask someone if they had any difficulty uh, grappling with anything in the book, whether it was the narrative or just the story, or did it read like uh, a very unbelievable account?
I, to be honest, I was going to come to that immediately after. And I think if we pick and choose the most dramatic events of any, like any interesting life, it will read almost like a, you know, a Bollywood movie. But there are some very, very big events that are actually mentioned in passing in the book, including, for instance, the bomb blasts, and, you know, knowing people who how it happened in front of them, and then also the many, many, many number of times that your mother uproots her life and then starts again, and then uproots her life and starts again, right?
I
I mean, it seemed like that to me in different places. And I mean, there's a lot of strength of character and resilience in that. But I did want to understand if at some point this was a collection that you picked to make it come across as much more power packed in like a very short this thing, because at some point it does feel like were some of these constructs, did you ever question whether some of these were like, you know, exaggerations in her mind, or like something that she might have put two and two together but might have played out differently? Was that ever a thing? Because there are times in the book that it doesn't feel like a memoir, it feels like a very gripping story, you know, just of fictional characters.
Tanya, the thing is, I remember once reading uh, Charles Baudelaire, or was it Marcel Proust, who once said, write prose like poems, and write poems like prose, something like that. Um, so I feel like I wanted to construct it like each chapter ends with some sort of a mm, cliffhanger where you don't know what's going to happen next to her. I think that comes from my background also in script writing. Uh, so yes, I might have employed that and stopped there and moved on, and then gone on to. So it's city to city, and it kind of goes back and forth between Bombay and Calcutta, and sometimes Pune. It feels like an adventure. It feels like a story that could uh, easily be read as fiction, because the things that happen to people in real life, like they say, are really, really sometimes stranger than fiction. So I guess I wanted to bring that quality of unbelievability to it. Like, how could all these things have happened to a person? But it is true, it could have happened. And because I have seen half the things growing up myself, so I am the fact checker. And if I don't know half the things, and if I think she's lying or fabricating or imagining it, then I have her sisters to fall back on and ask, is this true? Is this incident that happened?
Yeah.
Or so so there were many ways for her uh, to not make herself a heroine in a way, or the hero of the story, uh, but simply to just tell us her life.
That's really beautiful. But to be honest, I should flag that, you know, there has been so much demonization of memory and oral history in general in women's literature, as well as in history writing, where we think about fact checking, and when we always think about the necessity of objectivity. But, you know, even as memory, I think it is such a reliable and important aspect of history, of trying to understand how things were or how they were perceived, that at some point I don't think it really matters if things exactly played out, you know, the way that claims are made to, because it is so much about how she went through her life, how she felt about it, how she memorizes it. And I think it's very powerful that you just chose to tell that. So
But also, Tanya, memory is also fiction in a way. When you go
exactly,
back, you
absolutely.
when you're recounting a tale that happened, there is some amount of how do I say, um, uh, fiction that's happening in your head when you're telling it. So one has
Absolutely.
to sort of give and take here and there, and sort of live it.
Yeah, I think that questioning itself is kind of at some point a little irrelevant,
Yes.
because it doesn't matter. But thank you for that. Pratichi, you had a question. So please go ahead.
Hi, Manish. I think my question and Ananya's questions are going to overlap. I mean, so Ananya, if you would like to go about, I think I have a similar question as her.
Just
So,
why don't you read out Ananya's question as well and add yours?
yeah, I think she's writing, Hi, Manish, it is such a lovely book. I enjoyed it very much. I had a question. How did you experience and capture the essence of hierarchy between the Tawaifs and how it affected their lives and their choices? I was just going to talk about that, like I was also there, you chat with Radha. I mean, like we are friends and colleagues. So we're dealing with being historians of courtesans in 19th century. I think we don't have a memoir like this. So congratulations for writing it, as I was just saying in the beginning of our chat today. And the fact that even she's making this distinction repeatedly, that like she was at one instance in the narrative, she was like stunned when she was called, pardon me, like Randi, and not like this distinction. She always tried to mention that we are artists, we are performers first. Yeah. I think this is something that I have seen in my sources from 19th century Maharashtra also, like women are coming out using legal petitions saying, no, we are not, sex workers, not to demonize sex work in that sense, but it's also like we are artists, we pay the state, we have the tax arrears, this is the amount we are paying. We are like, all of this is happening, and it is good. I mean, it's not a good, it's a kind of observation to see how this also transitions into the post-independence period, because this is also a chapter I don't think as historians we have studied much, like how this kind of system kind of continued. And I think Ananya has a great question, that how did you see it, like this is kind of affecting the lives, because this is a constant tussle, because by the late 19th and early 20th century, like these gradations are getting clubbed under the derogatory sense of the notch, or like being like all the wives are kind of prostitutes. This is something that's kind of coming along. So yeah, Ananya is here also. Yeah.
Should we?
Yes, so they,
sorry,
yeah.
just because they're related questions, do you mind if you take Ananya's question as well before you respond?
Yes.
Please, Ananya, please go ahead.
Hi, Manish. It was a really really beautiful piece of work, and I congratulate you for that. And also thank you for like giving us a glimpse into something that has been stereotyped and has been derogated in many ways than one. My question has a lot to do with what Pratishi said, but also about the fact that there were hierarchies within performers as well. Like certain people from certain quotas and certain performers from from a certain geographical location had way more what do I say had way more capital to them than the others. And
Yes.
this was also captured by the this one instance that you spoke about, of your mother going to a 10-day annual Mela in Haridwar, and how certain tents were taken up by buys coming from more quote unquote prestigious places. So I'd like to understand a little bit about it more, because I am a performer myself, and I mean this is a really interesting insight. And also this entire distinction between a performer and a sex worker, and how does that define their sense of identity. So yeah, because now with Hiramandi in the courtesan is more and more conflated with the idea of a prostitute, which I find very disturbing. So I'd like a little
Sounds
bit,
yes.
yeah, I'd like you to sort of speak on it a little bit from your own experiences.
So they were on top of it, they are the Deredarnis. The Deredarnis are the wives who come from a lineage where their families have been in the profession for long, uh, as buys. Buy as in, there's a difference between a buy and a Jan. A buy is the wife who will just sit and sing. A Jan, like a Sahib Jan in Pakiza, or let's say Malika Jan in Hiramandi, is the wife who will sing and dance. So there's that distinction. Then there is the other distinction of the dated Darnis who came from gharanas, whether they came from the Banaras gharana of music, or they came from the Lucknow gharana, or I think the Patiala gharana. So they uh, they would only perform in their own kothas, and they would not step out of the kotha, and they would not go to, uh, let's say, uh, a function in a hotel where somebody's asked them to perform. So you had to go to them. They would never come to you. So these were uh, the prestigious tawaids, uh, according to what my mother told me, at least in the Opera House area in Bombay or in the Bazaar area in Calcutta. So this is her understanding. That's what she's passed on to me. Now, so then there was the girls who were brought into the kotha from the Bedia community, the Bedis of Agra, I think the tribe. They would procure girls, or they would sell their own daughters into the kotha to perform as, let's say, the jans, also to sing as bais, or to do both, sing and dance as jans. So that's how my mother was brought into it, this profession, this trade. And when she got there, she realized that she didn't have the kind of high culture, the kind of training, the kind of um, background that the Dere Darnis had. And they looked down upon her also, because she was not from like a good lineage. So, and uh, and because she came, I think by the 70s and 80s, uh, the profession had sort of started declining so much that nobody was listening or paying attention to the Dere Darnis, because they were just sitting and singing khayals and dadras, and the patrons were no longer interested in that. They were interested in the girls who were singing and dancing. And so it was easier to find the Bednis do that work, because singing, they felt, was a far more difficult um, job for them, as opposed to dancing on uh, Hindi film music. Uh, so, and then the Bednis are the girls who would perform in their kotha, but also go to other kothas. They would perform in hotels, they would perform at functions, they would perform in tents, they would perform at a police event for the police. So, and they would perform to request. So anybody could ask them to perform to a certain song, certain sort of, I would say, item number in their day. So, so it kind of became cheapened by that. The profession of the wives also became cheapened by that. But these girls were also doing it because it was just a form of survival for them at that time. They couldn't sit around in the quotas like the older buys and wait for the patrons. So that hierarchy was there, and my mother was very clear about it, that she didn't belong to them, and she had no qualms about that. She accepted them, they didn't accept her, but I think she was making more money at some point of time, and that's what mattered to her, because she had a very big family to support, and she looked at it like that. But also, like, for example, if you look at the what is the difference between the tawayas and the sex workers, is because they live so close to each other. Say, for example, the Kamatipura area, the Forest Road area in Bombay, next to the Opera House, Grant Road area, where at one side the wives live and one side the sex workers are there. There is, of course, a meeting point, and the lines begin to blur there. But a lot of these girls were still trying till the very uh, till the 80s, I think, mid 80s, they were still trying to eke a living as a wife, because some of the girls were then getting into dance bars. Dance bars had popped up in Bombay by then. And that's when it sort of became difficult to identify one from the other. I remember my mother telling me that she went to a dance bar and she saw the girls standing there in a huddle under some lights, and they were just shaking or just moving and not really doing anything. And she said to herself, ये तो ये तो नाच गाना है ही नहीं, तो मैं यहाँ क्या करूँगी? This is not a place for me. So then, so she didn't join that profession because, and then she saw that the dance bar, the girls in the dance bar were also being solicited. And she didn't want to be a part of that. So I think when it started fading out, the wife started fading out, is also when she started realizing that she will have to do something else in life to sustain, not sex work.
Thank you so much for that. There is a question from Vidya in the chat box where she's saying, you mentioned you always wanted to tell this story, and I think it is a very courageous step as a son about a courageous and bold mother. Generally, one would like to avoid mentioning unpleasant things. So what was the force behind you wanting to do this? That's from Vidya.
Very simple answer. It was her, it was not me. It's her story, it's her book. I actually refuse to acknowledge it as my book. Genuinely,
You
I
should
mean,
add her as a co-author, I think. In
yes,
the book is my suggestion for future
yes.
reference.
I think we missed out saying that it's an autobiography. I think we should have said that and said, as told to Manish Gaekwad.
Yeah.
Instead, we wrote writing my mother's memoir. So I think that is our fault. And I apologize for that. Genuinely, other than the introduction, this book has nothing to do with me. It's all her. It's all her story. And kudos to her wanting to tell her story to the world. I remember her telling me that she wants her story out in the world so that it can help, even if it helps one person understand themselves, uh, she will have achieved her goal in life.
That is so beautiful. How was she able to like see any version of the
Yes, I
book?
would. The manuscript was ready in 2021, I think. The book was out in 2023. So between 21 to 23, I she was aware of the manuscript, and I had read the book back to her, and she was fine with it. It's just that she didn't see the final book.
I'm sorry about that, but I'm sure that seeing the book in manuscript form written by her son was a moment of pride for her as well. I'm sure she would be proud of you for telling her
I
story.
don't I don't know, because I do remember showing her the article that I wrote about her in the Outlook magazine. And that's, when she sees physical proof of herself in her hand and then she sees a photograph in the magazine, she says, अच्छा है लेकिन मेरा फोटो बहुत छोटा है.
That is all of our mothers, isn't it?
Yeah, like she doesn't understand what's written in it, but she's like, मेरा photo और बड़ा होना चाहिए था. But she was very proud of that moment. She did go around showing it to all her neighbors and saying, देखो मेरी कहानी के इस magazine में आ गई है, मैं famous हो गई हूँ.
And I mean, just if I can add a follow-up, that once the book was out in the world, and how did you end up feeling seeing the sort of response that the book has garnered, or the fact that you were actually able to do something you said you wanted to do as well after you became a writer, have your mother's story out there? How is it sort of contending with the fact that the book is out there for you?
See, I became a writer in a sense in 2018 when my own book came out, and then I went and showed it to her, saying, "Ye meri kitab hai," and she looked at it and she was like, "Yeah, so what?" I mean, because she really genuinely doesn't understand what it entails to be a writer. She's always been telling me कि तू बहुत hard लिखता है and you are like Guru Datin Pyasa. What will happen to you? Nobody will read your stories. And it's, yes, because she thinks a writer's life is horrible and depressing and not worth it. So, I mean, I've always been in that sense, I've never really been some sort of a success to her, even when my book was out. So, it's only when she saw her own images, she told me once that सब अपने माँ बाप के पिक्चर्स फोटो इंटरनेट पे लगाते हैं, कंप्यूटर पे लगाते हैं, तू मेरे फोटो क्यों नहीं लगाता है? So I decided, "Khair ja, I'll do this." And so I started writing a lot about her, and all those essays, those Women's Day essays, and all these things became quite famous, popular. Then on social media, she got a lot of attention, and then she realized that now my son is capable because my story is out there. So, and everybody's talking about it. And so that validation that I got from my own writing, uh, I think, is when my book was out, I realized this is enough for me to go and tell her that now I'm a established writer with a physical copy, and so now we can write your story. So I guess for her it was just that. Until I see myself, how am I going to believe that you're a writer?
Diljit is actually asking, did she choose the cover picture?
Uh, I had her consent, but I chose it. I actually asked her for that picture because it's a picture that was taken on my birthday in a kotha in Bombay, uh, where she just, I think, to entertain everybody, she put the bottle on her head and she danced because that's something that she also did as a tawai in the kotha where she would do it for the patrons. So she was just amusing us children. And it's a candid shot, and it always stayed with me when I would look at it in a photo album. As a child, I used to think someday I'll be able to use this striking image. And so here's how I connect it to our times is the thumbs up bottle has the like button on it.
That's so beautiful. I don't know if you've written about it, but it would be really nice to have a blurb on that as well somewhere. That is such a beautiful. I mean, in so many reviews of your book, it's been said that this is like a love letter from a son to his mother, right? And I mean, it comes out in your writing, in the way you speak of your mother, in the way that, you know, the story um, about her. I think it is so much more than just a memoir of her own struggles. I see it as a bond of a mother son relationship. But my last question to you is that if 10 years from now or 15 years from now, how would you like this book to be remembered? If one people had to take away one thing from the book, what would you like that to be?
Uh, Against all odds.
That is perhaps your mother personified in some ways, isn't it? I think that's really beautiful. If anyone else has anything else to say, there is one more question. I think I know we're getting out of time, but if that's okay with you, we can just take one
Yes,
more
please.
question. Um, it's a question that says, "What of your mother have you learned the most?" I'm assuming in the writing of the book and otherwise. And was there something which changed in your understanding of her during the writing process?
I feel in my case, it might be the resilience that has passed on from mother to child. Uh, so I find myself, I mean, of course, when we grow older, and apart from the fact that now I look like my mother, I also, we all become our mothers, right? Uh, and,
Oscar Wilde.
And that's not a very bad place to be in. I kind of enjoy the fact that I'm becoming like her in my quietude, in my resilience, in my instinct for survival. I think it's all there, and it just gets stronger, that resolve to be free, independent, and make my own choices.
It has been the most inspiring thing reading this. I mean, there were passages I know that I underlined thinking that if someone can go through so much and still have the courage to keep going on, you know, sometimes it's good for perspective, and your struggles seem very small.
Also, I think, we don't take ourselves so seriously, but that has helped. Yeah.
I think
Don't take yourself seriously, and you'll have a wonderful life.
it's really really beautiful the way that you've tied this whole thing together. And I think one of my takeaways will be how you started this conversation by saying that we don't very often ask our parents about their lives and ask them about our stories. We're very often focused on, all the things that could have been and went wrong, but humanizing them and learning to listen to their stories and thinking more about them. I think that's something I will definitely take away from this book and the conversation.
Thank,
I think
thank you, Tanya.
on behalf of everyone, I think I would really like
Yes,
to thank you. It's been
thank
such
you,
a
everybody.
wonderful conversation. If you have anything to sort of say to our readers, I hope we didn't assault you too much with too many questions, but it's been the most
No, no,
heartfelt
no. It's
conversation.
wonderful, wonderful. I don't know how many people are online, but it's great. I mean, thank you so much that all of you read the book. I mean, इतनी मेहनत से पढ़े हो, question बनाए हो. I mean, it's wonderful, yeah. कौन करता है आजकल इतना?
नहीं बहुत लोग करते
That's
हैं, and there are lots of people who are already saying they're looking forward to your next book, and
inshallah.
we're all very excited. So I'm here's wishing you all the very best for that, and hoping that we call you again next year when your next book is out. But
Inshallah.
thank you
you
so
so much.
much. Have a good evening, and
You
thank you once again. I'll be putting up a YouTube video of this eventually, but I will definitely share it with you once before that.
आराम से, no rush, no hurry.
All right.
Enjoy your weekend. Have a good meal.
Okay.
And
Thank you
please
so
take
much,
care.
Manish. And
Thank you.
thank you everyone who joined us. I will see you again next month. Take care. Bye. Bye.